Welcome to this explainer on quality management systems and oversight. Specifically, we are going to be focusing on Module 3 of the PICS GMP compliance guidelines. Now, let's be honest, it is incredibly common to hear the phrase pharmaceutical quality system and instantly just picture a massive, dusty pile of compliance paperwork. But today we're going to reframe that completely. We are going to look at the PQS not as some static binder sitting on a shelf, but as a dynamic, living loop. Think of it as the actual engine that shifts a company away from a reactive culture of blame and towards a proactive culture of systemic, continuous improvement. Okay, so here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the quality system foundation, move into investigating unplanned deviations, then driving effective CAPA, mastering change controls, and finally reviewing the complete loop. Let's dive into Section 1, the quality system foundation. This is all about setting the standard right from the top down. To build a solid foundation, the pharmaceutical quality system has to act as this overarching framework that governs literally every control in your facility. And it must be explicitly owned and resourced by senior management. The ICH-Q10 lifecycle model frames this timeline of quality perfectly. Notice that the quality system doesn't just magically switch on the day of a commercial launch, right? It actually spans the entire life of a product. It begins way back in pharmaceutical development, where quality is designed in, moves through technology transfer so all that knowledge isn't lost, stays active to monitor commercial manufacturing, and continues all the way through to a controlled product discontinuation. Now, here's a vital distinction that often trips people up: the difference between quality assurance and quality control. Over on the left, quality assurance is all about systems and oversight. QA owns the procedures, the deviations, the change controls. Basically, their job is to prevent problems by design. On the right, quality control is your testing and measurement arm. QC samples the product, tests it against specifications, and detects problems by measurement. Both are distinct, both are absolutely crucial, and their independence from the pressures of the production line is completely non-negotiable if you want objective release decisions. So with all these moving parts, the crucial point is knowing exactly who is doing what. This is where a RASI matrix comes in. It eliminates that dangerous, "well, I thought you were doing it" ambiguity that completely stalls investigations. You have the responsible person actually doing the work, the accountable owner who is ultimately answerable for the outcome, those consulted for their specific expertise, and those simply informed of the progress. And speaking of accountability, we have to note that the authorized person, the AP, holds a unique personal legal accountability under Annex 16. They have to certify that every single batch complies with GMP before it can be released. To make that attestation, they are relying heavily on this entire system functioning perfectly. Moving on to Section 2, investigating unplanned deviations. Because, let's face it, things will eventually depart from expectation. The very moment a deviation is detected, it has to be classified into one of three severity levels: minor, major, or critical. And this is not just an administrative label, okay? Classifying a deviation early on is a crucial risk judgment. A minor deviation might have a really low patient risk, but a critical one might significantly affect product safety or efficacy. So this classification directly drives how deep, how broad, and how urgent the resulting investigation actually needs to be. Now, to solve these deviations, you can't just guess what went wrong. You need structured root cause analysis tools, like the 5 whys. By simply asking why repeatedly, usually around 5 times, investigators can peel back the layers of a problem like an onion. So if an operator made a mistake, why? Well, because the procedure was confusing. Why? Because it was updated without operator input. Suddenly, you've moved past the surface symptom of human error, and you've found the true underlying systemic failure. Section 3, driving effective CAPA. This is where we turn those investigations into lasting system fixes. So, why does retrain the operator usually fail? This is a classic symptoms versus systems trap. Think about it. If a trained, competent person makes an error, human error is almost always just a symptom of a poorly designed system that literally set them up to fail. Retraining them on that exact same error-prone process changes absolutely nothing. The trap is still right there, just waiting for the next operator to fall into it. Because of this, there is a stark contrast between a weak CAPA and an effective one. The weak default blames the operator, throws in a quick retraining session, maybe slaps up a sticky note reminder, and then just drifts overdue with zero evidence that it actually worked. An effective CAPA, on the other hand, targets the true root cause. It physically redesigns the step to prevent the error from happening again, assigns a strict deadline, and crucially, it demands an effectiveness check to prove the fix actually held. Let's ground this in a real-world case study of vial filling. Imagine an in-process check detects low fill weights. The investigation uses the 5 whys and traces the drift not to the operator, but to a worn seal that was way overdue for replacement. So what's the root cause? The maintenance schedule lacked a trigger based on run hours. The CAPA, then, isn't to just tell the operator to watch the weights more closely. The CAPA is to replace the seal and upgrade the maintenance system to include a run-hour preventative trigger. Finally, verification happens by checking the next 10 batches to ensure those weights remain stable. That right there, that is a systemic fix. All right, Section 4, Mastering Change Control. How we manage improvement without introducing uncontrolled risk. Every single change in the system must flow through these 5 disciplined steps. You propose and describe the change. Then you conduct an impact and risk assessment. You review and approve it, carefully implement it, and finally verify and close it out. Now, step 2, the impact and risk assessment, is the absolute heart of this entire procedure. You really have to ask, what does this touch? Does it impact our regulatory filings? Does it trigger revalidation? You have to know the answers before you act. The crucial point here is avoiding what's known as the like-for-like trap. It is incredibly tempting to just grab a replacement part from a different supplier, declare it like for like, and skip all that change control paperwork. But different suppliers or different grades of material can behave very differently under manufacturing stress. Assuming equivalence without properly assessing it is a dangerous gamble that silently risks the validated state of your equipment. The golden rule: assess, never assume. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, reviewing the complete loop. This is where we bring all this data right back to the foundation. A massive part of this continuous loop is capturing external feedback. Under Chapter 8 requirements, every single market complaint must be captured promptly and assessed for genuine product defects. If a defect is confirmed, it triggers an urgent, rigorous root cause investigation. You have to assess the patient risk and figure out the scope of the affected batches. If that hazard severity is high enough, this external feedback directly triggers a product recall. Make no mistake, complaints and recalls are the ultimate stress tests of your quality system. Ultimately, all of this data flows upward into 2 distinct types of formal review. On the left, we have the management review, where senior leadership formally evaluates the health and effectiveness of the overall quality system and allocates the resources needed to fix any systemic gaps. On the right is the product quality review, or PQR. This is an entirely different exercise. It's a periodic, usually annual, deep dive into the specific manufacturing and trending data of an individual product just to confirm it remains consistent and completely in control. This entire interconnected loop builds to one core philosophy. A single deviation is a point. Trends across many reveal drift before a process fails. This really summarizes the deeply interconnected nature of the pharmaceutical quality system. Complaints feed into investigations. Investigations uncover root causes. Those root causes drive CAPAs, which are implemented safely via change control. And all of it is trended and evaluated in management and product quality reviews, which in turn set new, improved objectives for the manufacturing floor. Which leaves us with this final, critical thought to reflect on today. Take a hard look at your own quality oversight processes and ask yourself, is your organization just fighting fires and reacting to symptoms, or are you actually using this interconnected framework to proactively upgrade the system? A true culture of quality doesn't just fix the batch, it fixes the business. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a fresh, practical perspective on mastering your quality management system.